Hello and welcome to the Mystic Table. I'm your host Robin Bevan, and in this video I want to go into some different aspects regarding the purpose of the channel. As some of you might be aware, this channel used to be called the Moment Podcast. And this has now been changed due to SEO issues, but also to reflect the purpose of the channel better. And whilst the roundtable exploration has been a big part of the channel, to seek knowledge and get closer to reality, trying to, figure out what is going on with the culture and the collective unconscious, this stage of seeking has come to an end. And in that sense, the platform was a countercultural space focused on discussions as free of partisan cultural war dynamics as it can be. To try to get to the source of issues beyond dogmatic or mere ideological positions, with spirituality, philosophy, history, and personal growth being important ways of approaching the culture-related topics we talked about. And the main purpose of these talks were to get to a deeper understanding of the factors at play, and with it build towards new ways of seeing the world. Where the channel really then also embodied the ethos of a modern mystery school, fostering deep, meaningful discussions. A part of this is the round table idea, where every participant is as much part of the shared journey, as much as their own individuation journey as well. Like the Arthurian knight embarks on their own journey, seeking the Holy Grail in the darkest part of the forest, in the same way, each person has their own unique path to follow. And by sharing our ideas and experiences, we were seeking to support and learn from each other on our individual journeys. Though in the end, personally, I've put together and shared all I could. And really, everyone else has their own journey, and I will thus bow out from any future figuring out business regarding the culture war or what is going on with society or otherwise anything along these lines. As I have all the answers I sought and more I ever wish to know. For myself, I feel complete and good as I am. The desire I had to seek and to want to know has been quenched. As Sokka would have said, it's the quenchiest. But yes, the channel itself will remain as a repository for seekers, as much as the History of Consciousness course on Patreon and Substack as well, next to my book Alchemy of the Psyche, which goes into the deeper theoretical work. So when it now comes to my own journey, well, my own journey started for me back in 2017. And it was a video by Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Peugeot about the frog and the golden ball, which fascinated me enough to look into Carl Jung. Which is really, what started it all off, for me personally. Even though there's much more, to that than just a mere video, but anyways. In that video, they had said that, the golden ball represents the highest value within society and it falls into the water of chaos, symbolizing the collective unconscious or the personal unconscious. Though for me, this journey was much more personal than just wanting to find the way out of the cultural war and the various societal divisions that plague society. So in a sense, this journey led me to find my own golden ball. Which is, what I'm bringing forward right now. With everything what I'm now doing. Though it was finally in 2020 that the actual individuation journey really started in a more conscious manner. Which is when Wotan called. First, calling me in its distorted shadow Wotan form. Where in dreams I wrestled with a werewolf, but also Fenrir being in some dreams as well. Where there was one dream in which I set free Fenrir from its chains. Which is when I wrestled with both the culture's leanings and eventually Carl Jung's framework. I would have to add that the pull of the Proto-Indo-European choreos and with it Wotan in the end really was stronger for me than anything else that could have pulled me in any other direction. But also, in the end, really it was about me needing to find my own path instead of, trying to walk the path of anyone else, as such a path would not have been mine. Though there is much more, tied to this than just the pull of particular archetypes, these forces of the unseen, which I want to, go a little bit more in depth later. But this initial pull led me to the creation of the Foxden community, which is the Discord community that's attached to this YouTube channel, which you can also join. And I would say make sure that you do, because there you can be part of the conversations as well. But yeah, so when I created that, I at the same time ended up creating the Moment podcast, which has now become the Mystic Table. Like I said, if you're interested in joining the podcast, you can freely do so. Just join the Foxen community and we can set things up. You can even suggest talks and ideas for talks as well. So feel free to join regarding that. The Foxden as a place being a collective egalitarian place for discussions where each person's journey and insights are valued. And it is there where we come together at the round table to find our way towards wholeness, where in the end this quest for wholeness and reality, as it truly is the main goal of the podcast. To make our way out of Plato's cave, beyond the distortions of modernity and our culture, to find real footing of life, grounded in the higher truths and with it the archetypal patterns that transcend cultural and temporal limitations. And when it comes to, trying to find this real footing, we've talked about various topics to help us try to get there to some degree, even though there's obviously much more, to explore. But, these topics ranging from cultural evolution, gender-related topics, mythology, to shamanism and mental health. So exploring these various topics. But overall, though, the channel really aims to explore the personal and collective unconscious, shedding light on the interplay between individual and societal unconscious aspects, which is really one big unifying theme regarding what is being explored within this channel. Yet the purpose of the channel and why I have been exploring these various topics in the first place, it really ties into my own personal individuation journey, as both the personal and collective unconscious are interconnected. We have our own personal shadow with the hidden aspects, the parts of ourselves we don't want to see or got repressed, and the, linked traumas as well. Yet many of these factors that lead to the repression of these aspects of one's personal shadow are as much tied into familial and the societal factors, which link directly to the societal complexes. So think societal norms, beliefs, attitudes, values next to taboos and stigmas, where Dionysian aspects like emotions, intuition, spontaneous behavior, artistic pursuits, communal values, mysticism, and spiritual practices, next to display of vulnerability and emotional honesty, are pushed into the collective shadow, where there can be thus a tendency to pathologize emotions and treat them as problems to be solved rather than integral parts of the human experience. Where also ecstatic rituals are seen as threatening to the orderly, rational structure of society. And a lot of these aspects tie not only to the Dionysian, but also with that into Wotan and the feminine as a whole. And as such, individuals at odds with these aesthetic emotional norms of society that align more with the Dionysian than the pure Apollonian society that is pushed, are shadow projected upon, seeing them as threatening embodiments of the collective shadow. So now to the personal part. So for myself, the need to face my own personal shadow, and with it the need to face the collective shadow, tied into my Dionysian soul. Because for nearly 2 decades I was cast into the scapegoat role for both my family and peers in my home country, feeling ostracized, living on the edge socially, where my authentic self was as a whole pushed into the shadow, leading to prolonged depression and suicidal ideation. Next to the entire experience leading to an immense mistrust of people generally. And it was for me, Wotan and the Koryos wolf warriors that led me on the path for me to free myself from this role, where Sylvia Pereira's book on the scapegoat complex helped me to put the last puzzle pieces together in my own journey to make sense of the roles of Wotan, Artemis, Dionysus, and the sovereignty goddess and their connected rites, and how this leads to the freeing of the individual of what is called the scapegoat complex. And as such, this channel aims to reclaim these aspects, and also to help liberate other individuals as well from these same issues. And part of healing this for myself was to heal both the victim child aspect, which symbolizes unresolved emotional pain and trauma from past experiences, and the wanderer aspect, which is burdened with collective guilt and chosen as the carrier of shadow impulses and has been alienated. Where for me also the anima was wounded as well. And in the modern complex, the accuser aspect, acting as an inner critic, assumes the role of a condemning judge that demands absolute perfection and adherence to rigid norms. This inner judge refusing to accept or acknowledge any impulse, creating thus a sort of rigid concrete block on desires which are repressed and seen as bad. And frequently, this aspect remains detached from awareness, concealed close to the inner child seeking acceptance, where the priest represents the embodiment of moral and societal norms, values, and expectations, portraying external redemption through the lens of social conformity, which were also all aspects that I was dealing with as well. And it was then the Koryos wolf warrior pattern which then helped me with breaking free from the accuser and priest aspect. This being tied to the Proto-Indo-European Koryos, who were composed of adolescent males that were initiated together into manhood, where a big part of this was their mystical self-identification with wolves and dogs as symbols of death, lawlessness, and warrior fury, where the idea of liminality between invulnerability and death on the one side and youth and adulthood on the other side were also another important factor, where they operated outside the societal norms and often in stark contrast to it, which is exactly why the Proto-Indo-European Koryos as a pattern, and really the archetypal pattern of it, beckoned towards me as a potential solution that my unconscious, had come up with regarding how to solve the dilemma I found myself in. With finally the internal redeemer, so Dionysus, and scapegoat, victim child, being through that transcended, making that into a dual aspect of scapegoat redeemer, so shadow and light as one, which then allowed me to liberate myself from the imposed burden of shadow projections and reclaim the authentic sense of self that I truly am. The sovereignty goddess also playing an important role in this process of healing. Yet, this process itself was for me also part of a larger Orphic framework that I reconstructed for what has become the mystery school idea, which is something that I talked about already earlier regarding, this also tying into the channel as well, as much as, Wotan, Artemis, Dionysus, and the sovereignty goddess. And really this forming an understanding of the different psychological and spiritual stages of development, and being a framework of understanding the larger cultural dynamics as well, which also ties into Project Windhorse as well, especially the last episode that I created regarding that. But you can see here the top one being called Kingdom of Uranus, which represents the initial state of wholeness, and with it the raw, undifferentiated state from which the personal development begins. Think here also to the wild man and woman in touch with instincts, which is also childhood. And with that, it's very much a state where distinctions and individuation are not yet fully formed, reflecting a primal and archetypal unity within the material world. However, to paraphrase Maggie Anthony, who wrote in her book Women and Dionysus, as time goes on, our parents and our society teach us to repress our instinctual desires. Some of these teachings, given harshly or with impatience, induce us to repress those needs. We're then at the point when we hit our teenage years without any rituals of the ancient cultures for us to transform into adults, which is, part of what I'm trying to bring back with this channel, the choreos, but also the Arctea and other rites, is where our society is breaking down. And this is when, some of the more negative alternatives begin to surface, drugs, alcohol, overeating, and increasingly in the teen and preteen years, suicide. Which is something, when it comes to certain Discord servers regarding mental health that I've been in, I've personally seen a lot of teens struggle with. But when it comes to the Orphic frame, this leads into what is called the Kingdom of Kronos. And this kingdom represents the state of division and separation, where it is characterized by a sense of confusion, chaos, and uncertainty, but also with the idea of control. Where Kronos' restriction of the primal forces of Uranus signifies the ego's attempt to regulate and control instinctual drives, where in the worst-case scenario, Kronos becomes the negative animus of the terrible mother, as thus becoming a symbol of the negative parental complexes. And it is really within this stage of psychological and spiritual development that shadow projection and thus also scapegoating is most prevalent, which is what in one Substack article I called solar madness, which is a term coined by Bustle, which is someone I briefly knew, which reflects the core issue of modernity. And in that sense, the dismemberment of Dionysus Zagreus by the Titans in Greek myth is also connected to this. Kronos representing hyper-rationality, order, and control within the psychic realm, where the kingdom of Zeus represents the internal ethical and moral development and is associated with the idea of wisdom, guidance, and inner harmony. And it represents the process of purification, self-awareness, and the start of integration of the shadow aspects of the self. And this realm signifies a higher intellectual and spiritual realm, noetic, where universal principles, ideals, and forms are contemplated and understood through moral reasoning and intellectual inquiry, where within Neoplatonic philosophy, the noetic realm that is connected to this, the intellectual or intelligible realm, transcends the psychic realm and represents a higher level of reality, where universal forms, principles, and divine intellect resides. And the kingdom of Dionysus finally then represents the process of integration and spiritual transformation. And within this kingdom, the anima has already also been realized as an inner figure, and there is thus an increasing movement towards the coming together of opposites whilst going closer towards the self, meaning the Jungian self, the center of the psyche. Symbolically, this being the emergence of Yahus, or what the Jungians would call the transcendent function, which plays the role of an autonomous regulator, and emerges and gradually begins to work as the process of individuation begins to unfold. Where within Neoplatonism, this aligns with the concept of the One, the ultimate source of all existence and the goal of spiritual development, where the union with the One involves transcending individual identity and experiencing mystical union with the divine, characterized by ecstasy and ineffable unity. And throughout this process, which also ties into the breaking of the scapegoat complex, and with that, very much also being deeply tied into the main purpose of the channel as well, regarding getting to these higher states of consciousness, and with it also higher levels of reality and closer towards what reality really is, beyond just these shadows on the cave wall. Is really tied to moving from one state of psychological and spiritual development to another, where the Korios, as much as the Korybantes from Greek myth that protected Zeus and Dionysus, are key when it comes to moving from the kingdom of Kronos to the kingdom of Zeus. Similarly, the Arctea being key for women, where then, for men, anima work further ties into the reintegration process, and with it also is connected to the sovereignty goddess, who in the end, together with her son Dionysus, helps to mend the two halves of the self, and with it takes away the burden of the shadow that was placed there through projections. And for me, shamanic journeys next to ecstatic rituals were, then also key in working through the repressed anger and rage, as much as creating the safe container for the inner child and anima to slowly heal. Though deep spiritual work involves, confronting and integrating difficult aspects of the self, such as past traumas and shadow elements, as much as processing the linked emotions and somatic tensions. Yet this is, a delicate process. Even if one has established contact with the soul fragments and the linked symbolic figures, this on its own is not enough. Because without the full reintegration of soul fragments, the underlying trauma remains unprocessed, and also causing emotional instability. And this can result in anxiety, depression, mood swings, and other emotional disturbances. So I know to successfully reintegrate soul fragments, it's also crucial for one to establish a healing relationship with these parts. And this involves recognizing, accepting, and showing compassion towards them, where expressing unconditional love and acceptance, further helps these fragments to feel welcomed and valued, encouraging them to reintegrate into one's sense of self. which also means countering the internalization of what the accuser aspect makes one believe about these aspects. This requiring a safe and nurturing space for the individual to heal before they can fully re-enter society. The latter being a process that can't be rushed and requires careful pacing. And this type of personal, but also in that sense collective healing is also part of the purpose of the channel as well. Even though I might want to add that when it comes to trauma and trauma healing, for most people, I would add that a therapist or a Jungian analyst is highly recommended to work on these things, because most people do not have the framework to fully work on these things. Let alone with the shamanic journeys, I highly recommend a qualified practitioner as well, just to add that in there. But this is part of the purpose of the channel, and what is being explored, and it's kind of something that I've been working on myself, even though it's still an ongoing journey to some degrees. But regardless, the sense of healing is very much part of the purpose of the channel as well, because the different parts linked to Wotan, Dionysus, the sovereignty goddess, for instance, these are not only aspects of the collective shadow, but also aspects that are thus wounded and in need of healing within each individual, and especially within individuals that have been either marginalized or scapegoated or otherwise treated in a certain manner. Because the thing is that society and all that with these norms and all that, things are not as clear cut as norms try to paint. Reality is much more complex, and that is also something that we're here trying to explore as well. We don't want to shy away here from the complexity and nuances of what we're looking at. Wanting to look beyond just simplistic black and white kind of thinking. Also, if you want to know more about the theory behind the process, next to the deeper historical, mythological, and Jungian psychological aspects connected to both the scapegoat complex, Wotan, Dionysus, and the sovereignty goddess, I also recommend my book Alchemy of the Psyche, which forms the theoretical foundation for what is becoming the Mystery School. And this foundation of the Mystery School also rests upon Proto-Indo-European and with it various Indo-European pagan pantheons. To really get back to the most fundamental, undistorted forms of these various deities. The Thunder God, Sovereignty Goddess, Koryos, and Yemu playing the most important parts within this foundation, the latter two also being linked to the Corybantes and Dionysus Zagreus. And with that, the purpose of the Mystery School, which is linked also to the purpose of the channel as a whole, as an extension of it, is similar in nature to the ancient Orphic and Dionysian mysteries, but with a modern Jungian twist, with some added Neoplatonism, focusing on practical aspects of personal and spiritual growth in an individualized manner. So a non-hierarchical collaborative approach where individuals guide their own journeys with a structured framework. Yet as Olympiodorus says, the final goal is to not be like traitors to ourselves like the Titans, yet to be in harmony with the unconscious and with it our intuition and emotions. Which is then, when we are like Bacchus. And it is the solar toxicity of the Titans with their hyper-rationality that disconnect us from instinct and our emotions, leading to this disconnect which causes chaos and destructive behaviors. Which is the very thing that we're trying to address here in the channel. Kind of like, this sense of solar madness that we could coin it. In this hyper-rationality, in this disconnect from instinct, which the Choreos and Arctea tie into, but also, the collective shadow, and with it the Dionysian, and various other aspects as well that are being addressed here. And all of this in the end leads into the mystery school connected to the mysteries of Dionysus Zagreus. And when it comes to this figure, well, as Zagreus, he is dismembered, and the underworld twin, where he is equated with powers of death, wasteland, drought, darkness, winter, and the underworld, where the reborn Dionysus, as divine child and new king, is connected to the powers of prosperity, life, health, joy, the fertilizing waters, the renewed sun, and renewed rulership. And this dual figure, where both come together again as Dionysus Zagreus, or, well, better said, Iacchus, in its final form, well, being heliochrotonic in nature, uniting the celestial and earthly realms, consciousness and unconscious. And this also being about the mysteries of life and death. And I'm not here, saying that this is the one solution regarding this particular problem. When it comes to the mystery school and its framework, it's very much one possible pathway out of the scapegoat complex, as much as the cultural fragmentation that plagues society and the individual. So there's possibly other ways how to utilize or deal with these particular issues as well, but this is one particular one that this channel is particularly about. Which also includes combining both the discipline of Apollo with the free, ecstatic nature of Dionysus through the Choreos, and really there's also the Choreobantes being a very important aspect of this as well. And this is similarly the case with Artemis and the Arctea as well. These rites of passage, that combine the discipline of Apollo and very much, Artemis, but also, the more free primal nature of Dionysus, and what Artemis also has. It's kind of like, to bring these together in the individual. And with that also, make relating between men and women possible. But really, in the end, this channel is dedicated towards the pursuit of wholeness over perfection. The coming together of the masculine and the feminine, which nurtures the inner child, which also links to the divine child, and with it to the emerging self. And with that said, I want to wish everyone who has gotten to this point kind of a congratulations to getting to this point, because it's a pretty long channel trailer. And for those interested, I want to remind you again, you can join the Fox Den, check out Alchemy of the Psyche, and there's a whole bunch of in-depth videos as well available that we did for the Moment podcast, or personal exploration videos as well that are there, one of which is the Journey of the Soul, where I go deeper into, the kingdom of Kronos and Zeus and Dionysus, and kind of, my own healing journey and various aspects that I went into here, where this video is really a combination of, I suppose, 3 years of talks and research. So with that said, you should be kind of semi up to date on where the channel is going. So with that said, really it just boils down to, I suppose, tackling solar madness, so hyper-rationality, and really bring back those Choreos Arctea rights, and with that really try to mend the inner wounding of the individual and the collective in the sense of, like, giving these insights so that people can use that together with either shamanic teacher or therapist or any other means like that to really get to the bottom of this and heal one individual at a time. And really, with these different talks as well, try to really mend and bridge what we can to really find a way forward. And really, I want to thank everyone for being here and for everyone that has subscribed and has been following the channel for a long time. And also make sure to check out the Substack as well if you're interested in some articles that I've written as well. And finally, yes, I'm gonna end this one on that note, and have a great day and goodbye.